What if I told you that one of the boldest political moves against Donald Trump didn't come from Europe, Canada, or even the US Congress, but from a Caribbean island best known for reggae, beaches, and resilience? That's right. Jamaica quietly took a stand, and the world barely noticed. While global attention was locked on Trump's high-profile feuds with China, Russia, and the media, something remarkable was unfolding in the Caribbean. Jamaica, a long-standing U.S. ally, was pushing back against his policies, his rhetoric, and the heavy-handed influence of his administration. But how did this happen? Why did they take a stand? And what does it mean for the future of diplomacy? Stick around, because what Jamaica did will shock you, and the reasons behind it will make you rethink how even small nations can push back against global giants. To understand Jamaica's defiance, we must revisit a complex and layered history. Since gaining independence from Britain in 1962, Jamaica has looked to the United States as both a powerful neighbor and a critical partner in trade, tourism, education, and immigration. With over 1.2 million Jamaicans living in the U.S., these nations are deeply intertwined. From the Reagan era to Obama, Jamaican leaders walked a diplomatic tightrope, safeguarding sovereignty while still cooperating. America offered foreign aid, student programs, and disaster relief. In return, Jamaica supported U.S. interests at the UN, participated in anti-drug operations, and hosted military training missions. But this partnership has not always been smooth. In the 1970s, Prime Minister Michael Manley aligned with Cuba, challenging U.S. capitalism, and Washington retaliated. Economic pressure followed, but Jamaica held firm. Since then, Jamaica has remained strategic, speaking out when needed but always keeping the diplomatic door open. That balance held for decades, until Donald Trump entered the scene. Trump's foreign policy wasn't about diplomacy, it was about dominance. His America First agenda pushed alliances aside and prioritized transactions over trust. This had serious consequences for Jamaica. Visa restrictions intensified, deportations spiked, crucial aid programs were defunded or erased, and as Trump courted select Caribbean nations with deals tied to UN votes, Jamaica refused to play along. That's when the resistance began. Quiet, but deeply symbolic. Let's begin with immigration. Trump's aggressive enforcement policies led to the deportation of longtime Jamaican residents, often for minor offenses and with little warning. Back home, the government was overwhelmed. Families were torn apart. The human cost was real. Then came visa denials. Students, families, and professionals faced roadblocks. Delayed, rejected, and disrespected. The U.S. Embassy in Kingston became a symbol of exclusion. On top of that, Trump's budget cuts gutted support for vital programs: HIV prevention, climate resilience, education, and youth outreach. These weren't handouts. These were lifelines. Then came a divisive moment. Trump's selective invitation to a group of Caribbean leaders at his private club, Mar-a-Lago. Prime Minister Andrew Holness attended. But the backlash was fierce. Critics across the Caribbean saw it as an attempt to buy loyalty. Jamaica, known for its sovereignty, was being pressured to take sides. This wasn't just diplomacy. It was diplomatic coercion, and Jamaica wasn't having it. And let's not forget the language. Trump's infamous "shithole countries" comment hit hard. Jamaicans were outraged. Leaders called it repugnant. Editorials condemned it as racist. And artists? They turned up the volume. From reggae tracks to radio debates, Jamaicans spoke out. Pride, dignity, and identity were on the line. So what did Jamaica do? Not loud protests. Not dramatic speeches. Jamaica responded with a masterclass in quiet resistance. Diplomats voiced support for multilateralism, a direct rejection of Trump's isolationism. The Prime Minister distanced himself politically. Support for U.S. initiatives dwindled. Ties with Canada, the EU, Africa, and China were strengthened. Even more telling was non-engagement. Meetings went unrequested. Endorsements were withheld. In diplomacy, silence speaks volumes. Ask Jamaicans about Trump? You'll hear anger, disappointment, and yes, even satire. Polls showed that over 70% disapproved of Trump during his presidency, citing racism, immigration policies, and global disrespect. Cultural backlash was fierce. Reggae artists called him out. Talk shows ripped into his hypocrisy. Protest art depicted him as a symbol of imperial arrogance. Even religious leaders joined the conversation, condemning the moral decay, hate rhetoric, and undermining of democracy. Though a small group of conservative Jamaicans quietly admired Trump's business-first approach or his anti-abortion stance, their voices were faint compared to the growing tide of opposition. These few supporters believed Trump's boldness could lead to economic gain or a more traditional moral framework, yet they were far outnumbered. The majority of Jamaicans, young and old, urban and rural, saw Trump as a disruptive force whose policies clashed with everything Jamaica stood for: justice, mutual respect, global cooperation. Jamaica, a nation built on the legacy of resistance, unity, and cultural pride, could not and would not turn a blind eye to policies that targeted immigrants, slashed aid, or demeaned developing nations. Trump's vision of the world felt less like leadership and more like domination, and Jamaicans responded not with noise but with conviction. So now that Trump is no longer in office, what comes next? The answer: a transformation. Jamaica has recalibrated. It's no longer relying on one powerful partner. Instead, it's reaching out to Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Caribbean bloc, not as a reaction, but as a strategy for a more resilient future. By diversifying partnerships, Jamaica is protecting itself from the risks of being economically dependent or diplomatically manipulated. It's creating new opportunities for trade, education, and cultural exchange, ones that are based on mutual benefit, not one-sided pressure. The public has also changed. The Trump era wasn't just an American moment. It became a global classroom. In Jamaica, it ignited a powerful awareness. People began to question the world more deeply. Why are some voices louder than others? Who controls aid, borders, diplomacy? Artists use their platforms not just for music and dance, but to call out injustice, to highlight racial double standards, and to promote Pan-African unity. Students led marches. Radio stations hosted fiery debates. Local churches and community leaders spoke boldly about sovereignty, morality, and the soul of diplomacy. This wasn't just political pushback. It was cultural awakening, a reclaiming of narrative. Jamaica didn't answer Trump's insults with rage. It didn't retaliate with threats or cheap diplomacy. Instead, it chose calculated courage. With silence, strategy, and steadfastness, Jamaica made it clear it would not be bought. It would not be bullied. In a world that expects small nations to obey, Jamaica chose dignity. And in doing so, it reminded us all, respect is earned, not demanded. If this story moved you, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Adventure Chuckles for more powerful stories that go beyond the headlines. And tell us in the comments, what do you think Jamaica's stand means for the future of global diplomacy?